Welcome back to Pine Haven Acres. My name is Kirsten, and in this video we are going to continue with our evaluation series evaluating this silver fox litter that we have here. They are 12 weeks old this week, and if you haven't already, I'd recommend checking out the 11-week-old evaluation from last week. I'll leave a link in the description for that video so you can go check it out. But we are tracking the progress and seeing how this litter develops and changes over the next couple weeks. Young rabbits, they change rapidly, and it's really cool to see that development. Just a quick disclaimer before we continue, I'm not a licensed judge, so the following evaluation is just based off of my understanding and interpretation of the standard for this breed from the American Rabbit Breeders Association. I'm going to be evaluating this litter in the same order that I did last week. So this is our first doe. She gained 6 ounces since last week, so she's now at 5 pounds, 11 ounces. At 12 weeks old, I'm aiming between 5.5 and 6 pounds, so she's looking pretty good on that. So we've got her posed up here. She's a commercial breed, so we line up the front feet with the eyes and the back feet with the hips, and that should lead to the peak or the highest point of the overall top line. So she peaks where she should. She's looking pretty good on that. Overall, she has more of a mid-length body. It's not too long, but it's not super compact and short. So that is good. Right now, she's looking pretty decent. With them being so young, I would like to see a lot of depth. Because like I said in my last video, as they get older, their body lengthens and they lose some of that height. So right now she's looking pretty balanced overall. From her top view, she has a good width to her shoulder, and then it tapers into a nice wide hindquarter. Her loin is very nicely filled in. I don't catch on those hips at all. She's just a nice balanced animal. I'm curious to see how that depth changes as we progress over the next couple weeks. Now onto her coat and silvering. You can see she's got pretty much all of her silvering in on her body. She is on the heavier side for silvering. Her coat is very much on the soft side. It doesn't have the coarseness that I'd like to see. Now there is a fine line between too coarse and a balanced amount of coarse and softness. The silver fox coat is very unique, and it's definitely something that you'll have to feel for yourself to really find the ideal texture to this coat. So it stands nicely, it has good length and good evenness of the silvering that is here throughout her body. It's just that when we get to the head, ears, and feet, as you can see, it's still pretty black. We don't have much silvering coming in, and that tends to be the issue with these heavily silvered animals. It doesn't carry the evenness to their head, ears, and feet like it should. So we'll just continue to watch that. Obviously, it's still growing in. You can maybe see she has some silvering right here at the top of her head, and a little bit speckled throughout, but I don't think it's gonna be as heavy as the rest of her body, but that's all right. So overall, I think she's pretty nice doe this week. Definitely filled out a little bit more than last week. And I'm also keeping an eye on her hindquarters here, her back feet. She's not super full down to the table when I get down here. Her feet are slightly pinched, so we'll just keep an eye on that. This is our second doe. She also gained 6 ounces since last week, so she's now at 5 pounds, 10 ounces. And last week she had some pretty long shoulders, and she peaked early. It was kind of a awkward situation posing her. It looks like she filled out a lot better and a lot more since last week. A lot of times with rabbits that have long shoulders, it's uncomfortable for them to get in a correct pose, so they often fight it and they just don't look very nice posed. So she still has a little dip here, if you can see, and she peaks early right here and flattens out over this area, so it should be moved back a little bit. She definitely looks better since last week, but I'm still seeing this little dip here. And you can see it's a dip, and then it pushes forward. Her spine pushes forward right here and slopes off there. So I'd like to see, you know, a filled in area up to the top and then nicely curve over. So this week she will probably be on my call list, just because I do not like those long shoulders. I would never buy this animal for myself to breed, and I wouldn't want to sell it to somebody else to breed either. It's just an undesirable quality. And then she has good width in her hindquarters. Her loin is a little bit hollow because her peak is pushed forward. Now for her coat, it is a little windy, so it's flying back here, but she has good texture to her coat. It's not as heavily silvered as the previous doe, and it is a little bit more coarse than the last does, but not exactly where I'd want it to be. But they are still babies, so give a little grace on that. She is still coming in down here with that silvering. It's not as even yet. And she has a good amount coming in on the top of her head and starting on the ears. So hers will probably be more even than our first doe's. And she is pretty full down to the table. Her feet aren't pinched at all. So we'll keep an eye on her. She improved a lot since last week. So we'll see how those shoulders look next week. And again, because her peak is farther forward, the depth is kind of wonky as well. So not quite as balanced as I would like to see, but a good example for what to look for. This is our third doe. She gained 8 ounces since last week, so she's now at 6 pounds, which is excellent. Very excited about this girl. Last week she was the biggest one in the litter, and she continues to be this week. Last week I commented on how she felt in her muscle density, pretty much. She was just very firm in flesh condition, and she just felt like a muscular rabbit, which is definitely what we want to see. These are a commercial meat breed, and that's what they were originally bred for besides their fur. So I really liked how she felt last week. So we'll get her posed up here. Now you can see she has quite a lot of depth to her back here. She has a strong rise. Again, she's not a super compact animal. She's got that good length to her body. Now she isn't quite full to the table either. Her feet are a little pinched here. So we'll be keeping an eye on that over the next couple of weeks. She's got good shoulders, taper into a nice wide hindquarter. And she's got a pretty good loin. I will say the first doe's loin is definitely the best out of the 3 that we've done so far. And with this doe's coat, it's not as silvered as the rest of them. It's on the lighter side, but that just means that it should be able to carry more evenly on the head, ears, and feet. She actually has probably the ideal amount of silvering to her. But like I said last week as well, just the pattern of where her silvering is coming in on her head and how it's coming in is a lot like some other rabbits I've seen, that as they get older and they become an adult, they actually don't quite have enough silvering on their head, ears, and feet to be considered even throughout their whole body. So right now my guess is going to be that she's not going to be quite even throughout her body with her silvering, but we'll just hope that she does grow some more in. And overall for the texture, she has good length and standing quality as well. It is pretty soft. I'm not feeling really any coarseness to her coat at all. But like I've said before, they are 12 weeks old, so this still has a lot of baby undercoat, and it's not going to be as coarse as after the first time that they molt out and get their true adult coat. And here we have our little chocolate. She also gained 8 ounces since last week, so she's now at 5 pounds 5 ounces. I would like to see her a little bit heavier. She is the smallest in the litter. And last week she was on the call list as well, just because her bone structure is super light. It's on the thinner side, and she just felt very bony. Her muscling was not filled in at all, but since then she has definitely filled out. We're making good progress with her, so let's pose her up and see what she looks like. So it looks like she does peak slightly early here. You can see it's kind of in the middle of her belly. So she doesn't quite have that depth to her that I'd like to see. She's just very long. You can see she kind of flattens off right here and slopes down. So her peak is over her belly. It should be like right here. Usually they're only like ½ an inch or an inch off, but you can definitely tell, you know, it's not quite where it should be. Now she doesn't have that much of a width change from her shoulders to her hindquarters. It is slightly tapered, but not as much as I would like to see. And she is still growing in her silvering. She's pretty much the same as last week, where she only has her adult coat in like a mohawk right over the top of her body. We're still waiting for it to come in down here and on her head and ears and feet. But what is up here, it has good density, but it's like a rollback coat. It doesn't quite stand like it should. It's got good length to it, but it's like floppy. I don't really know how else to describe it. Okay, so now we're going to talk about silvering. Over here on the left, you can see this rabbit is pretty much all white. This is way too heavy for silvering to be the ideal amount. You can see that it's very, very white. Then over here in the middle, we have a little bit more black. It's still on the heavier side. And then over here we have a good amount of black with a little bit of silvering. Now I'm hoping that the camera can pick up on the differences. It's ever so slight, but lined up next to each other, at least in person, you can definitely see the difference in the amount of silvering that they have. The evenness is also super important, so when you're showing, sometimes if you have a super heavily silvered animal but it's even all throughout, then they will kind of cancel out the factor that it is heavy in silvering. So depends on the judge, but sometimes if it's just even, doesn't really matter the grade of silvering that it has. Same goes for lightly silvered, or, you know, in this case, this one is pretty much perfect. Any less than that would be on the light side for the amount of silvering that they have. To finish this video off, I just wanted to read and answer a question that I got in the comment section under my last video from last week's evaluation. And they were just asking, when it comes to DQs, do I have a preference on things that I consider easy to fix or hard to fix, as well as when it comes to faults, what's easy and hard to fix. And then they just talked a little bit about their own struggles with trying to improve their silver fox herd. So I want to first start by saying any disqualification from the show table is not something that I will have in my rabbitry. It's a disqualification from my herd, pretty much. So that could include for silver fox, flyback coat, because they're supposed to have a standing coat, eye color other than what's called for, white spots or white toenails, rye tail, split penis, malocclusion, or they're under the weight for their age class. And I got that all from the Standard of Perfection. So if you don't have one, I recommend getting one from the American Rabbit Breeders Association. It goes over all of this, the DQs, the range of points, faults, all of that for each breed that's recognized. So I recommend getting that if you don't have one. But those DQs, it gets the rabbit kicked off the show table so they don't even place. And if the rabbit gets kicked off, it's not a good representation of the breed, and that's not what I'm going to want to have in my rabbitry. I'm trying to improve the breed, so hopefully that makes sense. If it has a DQ, it's gone from my rabbitry. I don't want to sell it. I don't want to breed it, all of that. And from my understanding, all of the DQs that I listed are genetic or possibly genetic. So even breeding that and trying to breed those things out might get messy because the kits will then carry those disqualification genes. So when it comes to faults, though, every rabbit is going to have some type of fault. No rabbit is perfect. So those are the things that you can work with and breed. Now when I was talking about, I think it was last week's video, or it was the video where I was pairing some brood stock together and trying to figure out which ones would best complement each other, I mentioned there's some faults that are automatic calls for me just because they are harder to improve. And with the place that I'm at now with the breeding stock that I have, keeping like an animal with long shoulders or pinch hindquarters, that would set me back from the progress that I've already made. So when it comes to that, like, you can start with the animals that you have and try to breed to improve that. It's a very slow process, or you could take the easy way out and, you know, jump up a couple months or weeks in your progress depending on what animals you're starting with, and just buy some better stock from another breeder. Again, like I said, every animal is going to have its own issues, but some things are easier to fix than others, and some animals have more faults than others. So sometimes it might be easier just to purchase an animal that has very few amount of faults and things that need to be corrected by breeding, rather than, you know, some animals that you might have just bought because they were cheap and you didn't know what you were looking for in that particular breed and whatnot. So I've done a little bit of both in my rabbitry, just kind of figure out what works for you and what you can work with. In my experience, if it's a structural problem, like the peak placement, like the spine is where it peaks, or pinched hindquarters, long shoulders, the loin is just hollow. Usually that's because something else is affecting it, like the peak placement and whatnot. Those things are harder to fix. You would fix them by breeding and pairing with a better typed animal, but from my experience, what I've seen is I'll only get maybe 1 or 2 kits out of the litter that are the improvement that I bred for, and the rest of them still have those faults from that one parent or maybe both of them. So yeah, you kind of have to weigh out, you know, what you're willing to work with, and definitely once you get to that point where you're not producing as many rabbits with a wide range of faults, maybe you're only dealing with 1 or 2 faults in your herd that you have, then, you know, it becomes easier in a sense. There's a lot of things that kind of you'll have to take into account. You know, if you have a large rabbitry and you're breeding a lot of does at a time, you'll have a wider range of animals to pick from. But at the same time, if you have a smaller herd, sometimes the smaller herds tend to improve faster, just because you can be more detailed and more specific with what you're breeding, and there's a lot that can go into it. But I guess kind of what I want my conclusion to be is that when it comes to disqualifications, those are like a no-go. That's something that I don't want, and I don't want to sell, I don't want to produce. You know, the line ends there if I come across that in my rabbitry. When it comes to faults, there's certain things that I'm willing to work with and other things that get called because I don't want to work with that. It's not a good rabbit, I guess. Like, I can produce better. That's basically the point that I'm trying to make here. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I kind of cleared that up a little bit. But if there's any questions about that, I'm more than willing to help you answer those, and in the best that I can. But my advice would be just to get a Standard of Perfection book and read it yourself if you don't have one, because it definitely will answer a lot of those types of questions. And yeah, with that said, thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed and learned a little bit. And stay tuned for our next video, because we will continue to evaluate this litter for the next couple weeks and track their progress. So thanks guys. Have a good day.